Welcome everybody to the first episode of Hop on the Call, and on today's episode on the call with us we have a special guest, fresh off his GOAT Worlds play, GGP champion, UDE Day Madison champion, multiple regional winner, musician, and my friend Nolan Benson. Nolan, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you feeling after your run from GOAT Worlds?
I feel pretty good. It's good to be here. I was happy with the deck choice. We'll get into that. It's tough competition anytime you play in any type of world championship. So I was happy with how the deck performed, and when you're playing really good players, sometimes a lot of it is who is better. That's just how it is. Outside of Alvarado, who clearly was the best player all season, and mad congrats to him for taking it all down, well deserved. So yeah, I felt pretty good. I didn't play Chaos Turbo, which we'll talk about, but
yeah, for sure. No, of course, congrats to him for winning. Speaking of your deck, I do want to talk about your deck because you were given a deck tech by GoForMet.com. You were playing something a little bit off meta, well, actually a lot off meta. You want to go ahead and explain, you talked about in your deck tech a little bit of the reasonings why, but you want to go ahead and explain your thought choice behind choosing Zoo Return.
yeah, so going into the tournament, I don't play a ton of GOAT format, so I didn't want to play Chaos Turbo. There's many better Chaos Turbo players than I. Even for GGP Chicago, I played Reasoning Gate, so that deck also is on my mind. I think higher level competition knows how to play against it a little bit better. Honestly, with that deck, though, I do think if you draw the right cards, nobody can beat you. It doesn't matter what their cards are, which is why I like that deck. But for this event, I wanted to play a deck that could go toe-to-toe with Chaos Turbo. So the starting point on that was main deck Triple Kaiku. I didn't want to play Warriors. I like playing decks that aren't expected a lot. You know, we'll talk about Edison too a little bit, I think, later.
Mm-hmm.
I don't play big 3 decks in Edison either. It's just more fun to me to play something a little bit more creative and allows for a little bit more flexible play. So I did play sort of Bazoo Return. There's only one Bazoo, which I think is enough. The whole idea was to play flips that can get knocked or get your flips knocked. So triple spy, triple deco, which is pretty standard in return decks. And kind of flip return out of nowhere and just do like, anywhere from 4k to 8k in damage in one turn. And it worked pretty well. I also made like the brain control, kind of just getting more towards that aggressive strategy and being able to OTK out of nowhere. And I had the double Zaborg, which a lot of return decks don't run brain control, and Zaborg can be really bricky. So brain control kind of helps you, if your opponent does overcommit to the board, you brain Zaborg, you're up so much in tempo. If you ever pull that off, it's pretty much game over if they don't have a solemn. So that was the thought process behind the deck. It's kind of like a Warrior Chaos Return Thunderclap.
Yeah.
Hybrid.
I was going to say it's like a Thunderclap hybrid deck because you are involving, the Zaborg in there, really getting in there and punishing with the brain control, as you said. I think brain control as a card in Go For Med is a lot underexplored because it's like a mainstay in Edison, right? But then you come to GOAT and like no one plays it. And to me, it's like there isn't enough payoff, right? Because when you think about in Edison, you have Caius, but like the payoffs in Go For Med is like you have Mobius and Zaborg, which are like, on the fringe of play. But being able to abuse that in like a Thunderclap style strategy while also being able to abuse, everyone main decking Nox for the flip effects, it's a really cool niche interactions that all come together and they work really well. It's very aggressive. In the article that GoFormat.com wrote you quoted yourself as an aggro player and you like to punish the no-wins with your return strategy. You're also quoted as being smart with your resources. So with a deck like this that you designed to be that hybrid Thunderclap return deck, do you think that most people who attempt to pilot a similar deck or something of that nature often fail because they lack the resource management ability, or is that something that you pride yourself on, or can you explain on that?
Yeah, I think going back to GGP Chicago, like Reasoning Gate never winning in the U.S., I'm not gonna say I'm the best Yu-Gi-Oh player out there, but resource management. I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh since I was 8 years old. Um, I got my first regional top when I was 13. So
Wow, that's crazy.
I was playing against adults. I won UDE day when I was 14 or 15. I don't remember if I had my birthday. So I have a long history of playing this game, and the way you lose a lot of the time is you overextend. And another way you lose a lot of the time is you're too passive. So you have to find the balance, and I think it's what makes a really good turbo player really good is understanding how to win the mirrors by controlling the tempo of the game. If you play too passive, you can get punished. If you play too aggressive, you can also get punished. Um, so, but when you're playing fringe decks or rogue decks, like RGT is obviously a really good deck, but it's not in the top two, maybe not even the top three. I think a really good RGT pilot can take that deck to a whole nother level, but most people who pilot RGT, actually, I find a lot of people are on the machine OTK RGT, which I think is a lot worse. Um,
Can you explain why you think it's worse?
it's so much less consistent, and you can't really play a mid-range game very well.
Yeah.
Um, my list from Chicago can play a mid-range game, and I
Hmm.
outgrinded Goat Control multiple times throughout the day, um, which you can't really do with the machine OTK as well. Uh, you have Chaos Monsters, but they're just broken, and you don't have them playing. You can't do like wild pushes and just get free value off Dimension Fusion because you don't play Dimension Fusion.
Hmm.
And Dimension Fusion is such a broken card. You get like 3 to 5 cards for free. So, well, for 2K life, but still,
It's
like,
insane. Yeah, it's soul
Sacred
charge, but with your
Crane.
battle phase. You know, it's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's still charged with your battle phase. Sacred Crane draws you cards. If you have 2 Sacred Crane banished, you draw two. You treat it beforehand. You know they don't have any response. There's no Gores in Goat. So it's just like calculating when to make that push. And you don't need as many combo pieces to win the game um, as you do for the machine gate. But it's
So yeah, on the topic of like Dimension Fusion as a card, right? I'm curious to why you opted not to play one or two copies in that in your zoo list or in your Return Thunderclap list because I've seen around like 2006 2007 period of Yu-Gi-Oh. That's when Zoo Subfew, that was a deck, right? You're playing Cyberjar with Bazoo and you have Dimension Fusion. You have access to like Stratos and
uh,
the good spell cards then. But like even then, they were playing Bazoo with Dimension Fusion, and you opted to play the Return variant. Did you ever consider playing Dimension Fusion in your list, or was that just something that was off the table because you rather play the Judgments and have the life points for that?
yeah, I think it was off the table. A big reason too is if you're playing a game where your goal is to get knocked or knock your opponent, they're gonna have monsters to bring back off Dimension Fusion too.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have D-knock, so your payoff for Dimension Fusion is a lot lower. Jinzo, I love Air Knight. People are gonna probably flame me for that, but I love Air Knight. Um, so you don't have Air Knight either. You don't. Your best return, your best banished cards are like Zaborg, DD Warrior Lady, Kaiku's pretty good. Anything that's like big, and if you summon a Sork properly, it doesn't come up that often, but if you did and you banish it, then you can bring it back off return. And you're not flipping your turn until you have game anyway. It's like basically the same card.
Mm.
I think Dimension Fusion you could activate preemptively for sure. I did that a lot where you like don't necessarily have game, but you say out this board or lose, and most of the time they can't out the board. So with return, it's just a different. It's similar, but my opponent doesn't get their cards back.
Yeah,
So
that's a big thing about Dimension Fusion. They do get their cards back, and at the same time, when you're main decking the Kaikus and the Nox, it's like you are going to be banishing their cards to keep
yeah,
like
that's the Kaiku's too. Yeah,
yeah,
you're right.
because it's if the meta's Chaos Turbo and you're building a deck that's anti Chaos Turbo, and the main strategy in doing that is banishing their Light and Darks from grave, you don't want to give them back after from Dimension Fusion. So it does make sense. I get that consideration. Um, but then going off, I want to talk about your side deck a little bit because there are a couple cards in the side deck that I'm like, okay, you're doing something with that. The first is the Jowgen, right? You're playing the Jowgen, two of them in the side deck. You want to explain the reasoning behind how Jowgen doesn't conflict with your deck?
Uh, it It does, but it's one of the very few outs to RGT variants.
Hmm.
And I'm a RGT. I'm a, I consider myself a pretty decent RGT pilot. I know how scary the deck can be in the hands of a good pilot. I don't think anybody brought Chaos RGT to Worlds. I could be wrong,
I
but
have
I
to check.
believe
I don't believe I saw any. Not that I watched all the streams, but I didn't see anybody play it on stream. But I have to check the list to see if anyone brought
uh,
it.
I think there was one. There was definitely one Machine Gate
Hmm.
player, and yeah, I just so maybe it was a bad meta call with Jowgen in there, but I feel that deck. And honestly, I had pretty solid sideboard plans Warrior and for Warrior Burn and Chaos Turbo. So like I don't feel like I was missing the extra side deck space. I mean, maybe Zambira, you could argue, could have gone in there for Warriors, but because I do play Robo, so that could be something like cut one Jowgen for Zambira. The thing that uh, still come up in my deck building, I hate singletons in the side deck.
Yeah.
Unless it's a weird card. Because the point of side decking is you want to see certain cards in certain matchups.
Correct. Yeah.
And playing a singleton, you're not going to see it, and you're only at most playing 2 games with that one card in your deck. So why side it? I don't understand that philosophy in Edison. People are like 1 crow. For me, it's like 2 or 0.
Hmm.
I either want to see the card or I don't. And the argument that people have is it's a one of. I only want to see one. Well, if you put 2 in, you're unlikely to see 2 if you run the numbers.
Hmm.
It's very unlikely you see 2.
I
So
Yeah, I've seen
I
people,
don't.
try and argue with. They pull up the hypergeometric calculator with all the probability stuff, and I'm like, I just play 3 of it. If I want to see it, I want to see it. If I play 2 of it, I
Yeah,
need to see it. The only time I
yeah,
play one card in the side deck or something like that is if it's limited to one, right? That's the only time you'll do it.
yeah. So that's why it says 2 Jowgen
Hmm.
or 2 something else. It's never going to be 1 Jowgen. Because if you're playing against RGT, you said 1 Jowgen. The odds of you seeing it at the right time are so low.
Hmm.
Even playing 2, you probably won't see it. But it's a lot higher chance that you see it. So,
Plus, you anticipate with this list specifically, you anticipate, getting deck thinned by your opponent through the knock. So,
right.
that's thinning out a max of 6 cards just off the Spy and Koichi, right?
Yeah.
So being able to get those out is really nice and helps to see the cards
Prize
too.
them themselves, the Koichi draws you cards, so even
Hmm.
if they don't knock it, you're still advancing your deck thinning.
Yeah.
So you're trying to see your power cards as much as you can.
And then I want to talk about you have the one tribe in the side deck. Was there a reason of siding it versus main decking that card?
Yeah, the reason for discarding cards in this deck is so costly.
Mm.
You don't want to do it unless you're playing against Warrior or you're playing against Goat Control. Because mainly Goat Control, like Scapegoat is the bane of this deck's existence.
Yeah.
I really hate Scapegoat. You can also side tribe against RGT if all RGT variants should be playing 2 to 3 Scapegoat. 3 is correct if you ask me, but um, yeah. So if you see Scapegoat, you want to be able to tribe them away so you can OTK. Because if these little goats sitting, you can't activate return. It's not like Dimension Fusion where you keep the cards.
Yep.
If I true mode the chain goats and I'm playing RGT, I could Dimension Fusion, get value, swing over all the goats, probably have a Jinzo on the board,
Hmm.
But in this deck, you can't do that. So, tribes for goats and tribes for, like, really heavy warrior decks. Um, and I side it sometimes, like game 2 against Chaos Turbo to outspies. That's another problem with this deck. So it's definitely a consideration in the future. If I were to make a change, you could argue to move tribe to the main. Um, it's just discarding is so bad in this deck.
Yeah, it's hard to, you kind of need everything to combo off, and you need everything in the right place too. And tribe sometimes helps you get stuff in the graveyard, but it's not going to help you get the right thing at the right time, right? It's like you said earlier with your siding 2 cards, like you see it at the right time, or maybe you don't see it at the right time. And then if that's the only card in your hand, like if your opponent has scapegoats and you have a tribe and you have your a return in hand, and you're like, well, I can't just pitch my return because that's how I'm going to win the game. So it's that's what goes back to what we were originally talking about being smart with your resources. And so that's when it really comes back to being what kind of pilot are you. So
Yeah, if you're using tribe to out one monster, that's not worth it in this deck at all. So
for
it has to be at least 2.
for sure, for sure. And then, uh, actually, I did want to talk about one more thing. I'm just noticing with you were heavy on the burn hate. I'm realizing now because we have another dust in the side, two walks, and two wombats. So you're really heavy on the burn hate. It was burn something you expected a lot of, or why the burn hate? Because
It's just
as a burn player myself, I'm just
yeah,
looking out.
a bad matchup. It's a really bad matchup for any deck that plays 5 cards at half your life points.
Yeah.
So, and burn really mitigates a lot of what you want to do because you probably have to side out solemns. You probably at least like 1 to 2 solemn. You really can only afford the solemn really late in the game, so it's not that good of a card. Um, and then returns are okay if it's actual lethal, but playing half your life once against burn is such a bad idea. So you want to have other cards to put in to help you be able to take burn on. Because my deck probably loses to burn most of the time. So um, I felt like the main deck was pretty strong against Chaos Turbo already. So you just think about what are my worst matchups. What do I need to actually side for? And burn is, if I saw it, I didn't want to auto lose.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of just. I know some people. There was a burn in top 8. I know people like to play the deck. It's a strong deck. I wanted to respect it. I think generally a lot of people put a lot of thought into their side decks, but side decks are less important than people realize. Like, of course they're important, but
Yeah.
we were talking about before, you're seeing your side deck cards games 2 and 3, and they impact the game a little, but they're not gonna. In most matchups, they're not gonna be the reason you win or lose.
Mm-hmm.
The main reason you win or lose. Like Sakuretsu Hammers are super good against Warriors, obviously, or any aggro deck, Earth aggro. So that makes sense. It's a good card to side. But yeah, when you side a lot of cards, you lose consistency. You lose what your deck's trying to do. I talked about this in the deck profile with RGT.
Mm-hmm.
You can't afford to side extensively in RGT
No.
because you lose your consistency. And I feel like I don't need to side with that deck. And with this deck, I felt I was already pre-sided for Chaos Turbo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you expect the field to be like 50 to 80%, honestly, Chaos Turbo, then you need a main deck that's pre-sided, like you said, that's kind of hedging your bets against that. And so I kind of liked how the idea of the deck was to be Chaos Turbo anti, and then in the side deck is where you can bring in extra things for the extra matchups, but you're mostly expecting those turbo matchups. So that's why that the deck did put in work, and from what I saw from your records, you were able to beat some of the Chaos Turbo players you were playing pretty easily. So going with the Worlds tournament itself, do you want to tell us about how was your experience with Worlds? Just like being someone who never you only played in the one GGP, right? And you just got you're invited and went to, this is your first time at Worlds. How was that? Just big lens, right? Going into the event, logging in, playing online. I don't know if this is your first time playing online. Just tell me all about that.
Yeah, I played Pokemon online in COVID a lot. I had some success with that. But Yu-Gi-Oh! Dueling Book's not my favorite. So, I don't enjoy online tournaments too much. I don't grind Goat Ladder that much. Well, I don't ever grind it, really. I played some games with this list specifically leading up to Worlds just to kind of get a feel for how it runs and make a couple changes. Yeah, Worlds was it's always great to play against like the best players. It's a good barometer of your own skill to an extent. Round 4 I got blown out because my opponent had every answer to everything I did, and he was playing Warriors, which game 1 is a tougher matchup because you don't have the Sakuretsus. So, and game 2 just had literally like every single hour. I was just kind of like, come on, really? So it goes like that sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, the registration process could have been done sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was done like Friday evening.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So they ran LCQs that week, which I think in the future probably shouldn't happen. Just focus on preparing the players that already qualified for Worlds.
So you don't think any LCQs at all should happen? You don't think there should be
No.
any chance?
So the week of Worlds, I don't think there should be an LCQ.
You think if there is one, then they'd be like a week or 2 weeks before, maybe something like that.
Yeah. Like 2 weeks before, and then but they run the PWCQs every week.
Yeah, they did.
So that's basically your LCQs. You like that's the alternative way to qualify. So you already had an alternative way to qualify.
Yeah, there was a couple ways. There was PWCQs. You could get FLC invites, GGP invites. There was
So
tons of ways to qualify. Yeah.
I don't think LCQ was necessary in this case. It's not like nationals where you could back in the day you had the top 4 regionals and then they'd run LCQ at nationals.
Mm-hmm.
So I I would have liked to have a bit more like heads up time to figure things out. But I got everything done that I needed to get done. They are a small team working really hard, so I want to make sure I like appreciate them for running the tournament. And it was once we got into the tournament, you know, the early rounds of any tournament are always kind of like, okay, we're trying to get into the rhythm and getting the tournament going. People were submitting their deck, changing their deck list after 10 o'clock, which was like, they said, don't do that. And so it delayed it further for pairings. So there was a delay in the beginning, but that's pretty much every tournament, whether it's online or in person. And then, yeah, it's 50-minute rounds, so, and it's a top-level competition, so there was a lot of time, matches that went into time, so it's lengthy rounds, and
Going on that, there was a lot of. I remember watching the stream, and JDZ, as he was commentating, was speaking on just the pace of play that was kind of going on throughout all the rounds. And I just want to know if you just mentioned you had some experience with that. How does slow playing affect your gameplay, or what do you think with the online space there's a little more leeway given, or?
I think it's hard in online space to get a judge over. Like in IRL, you could just judge. Judge over. I think my opponent's still playing, and you watch the table for a few turns and make sure they're playing at a good pace. It's hard to do that online. You have to like hop into Discord and call judge, and then that takes time for the judge to get into the appropriate match because there were a ton of matches on the screen, obviously. So I play very fast. Well,
you're an aggro player, yeah?
Yeah, you probably witnessed it at GGP Chicago. Watched my replays at all in Worlds. I play extremely fast. I have never gone to time since I started playing the Edison format as an adult. I've never gone to time in any tournament. So if my opponent's playing slow, I don't have an issue saying like you need to play faster. But usually my pace of play makes up for any like unreasonable pace of play unless they're literally like taking 3 minutes between turns or between moves, which I'll be like, nah, dude, you gotta pick up the pace. Like that's not happening. So, and the other thing you do is if like you're in a losing situation, then you scoop. You say, like, this game. A lot of people don't have that skill, but that skill comes from Pokemon, where you have to scoop sometimes in Pokemon. It's like a part of the game that's not really a part of Yu-Gi-Oh.
That reminds me of a time. I remember I was watching. This was a regional in 2023 for Pokemon, and I don't remember what city it was. But one of my good friends, DefCon TCG, shout out DefCon if he sees this. He was on stream. Game 1, clapped up his opponent. Game 2, the camera is cut to go show the field, and my friend scooped the beginning of Game 2. Because his hand was unplayable, and he was playing at that time. I don't know if you know about the Lost Zone deck.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, it's a slower game, right? And so because he was playing Lost Zone, he's like, I'm scoop up Game 2 and go to Game 3. I'd rather have time for a Game 3 than time to stall out a Game 2, right? And that's something I see a lot in Yu-Gi-Oh player that doesn't convert. The ability to like, okay, I know I'm losing. I'd rather just have time for the next game, so let me scoop up.
Yeah, you'll see it a lot more from the more so in the Edison community with the players who have YCS tops. You know, in Chicago, you have Marcus Hayden.
Yeah.
You know, Eric Shen's really good. Eric Chai's really good. HT19, like they all probably know how to scoop when they need to. Doesn't happen too often. You know, Frazier. I'm sure Frazier knows if I feel like I have a good chance to win Game 3 and Game 2 feels unwinnable. I'm gonna scoop it up to go to game 3. So, um,
Especially
yeah,
with YCS's now doing the Ultimate Time Wizard events, and they're running off current Konami policy, right? So current Konami policy is end of phase, right? It's not
right.
turns. So I think scooping comes up a lot more then, because you don't have 3 extra turns now. Like I know GoFormat.com, they still run their events with the 1 2 or 0 1 2 3 for time. But if say GoFormat was to break out into Ultimate Time Wizard events, they would have to follow Konami policy, which would be end of phase. And so I think that ability to know when to scoop comes in heavy, and I feel like that's something players will need to develop to learn if Konami picks up Go Format for Ultimate Time Wizard
Yeah,
events.
yeah, they will. Especially in like control mirrors. Yeah, because those are all the games that were going to time involved chaos control, which is that's the reason I didn't play the deck.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not a control player. But that's the first deck that I learned to play in Go format is chaos control.
Yeah.
As that's the first deck I built in paper, and I play against my brother. But I put Air Knight in it. I put Sky Control or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Multiple Air Knights back when Chaos Control was more popular. So you play mirror matches. So you made deck Air Knight for the mirror, but obviously he plays Turbo, so that didn't come up. But I just love the card. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Chaos Control is like probably everyone's first Go deck. It was just like because you
Yeah.
got to play the Thunder Dragons, the Chaos Orcs, and you also got to play Meta and Scapegoat. You're like, I'm playing everything. This deck's insane. And then
Right.
you get to play the Air Knights too. I remember I 100% played Air Knight in my first Chaos Control list. So
Yeah.
card was
It's so
piercing over
fun.
tokens.
Yeah, Meta, take their monster, tribute for Air Knight, attack, draw a card.
It's crazy. It's
Well,
good stuff. It's
so the
good.
right monster for BOS. So there you go.
I'm saying
But yeah.
it was an insane card. So now I want to get into kind of big picture with regard to Go format, right? You've played in person, you've played online. What was the biggest difference? Do you think, if you could pick one thing, the biggest difference between playing online and playing in person? And then where do you think the future is headed? Do you think it's headed to more online play or more in person play for Go format?
Yeah. So I think for me the biggest difference it's just the tactile aspect of the game. I like physically drawing cards, shuffling your hand,
Mm-hmm.
putting cards down, selling the BOS, like, and also with in-person events, like last night at GGP Chicago, I was like talking to people. Shukri and I had a lot of really cool moments. I met you.
Mm-hmm.
And you just like don't get that in online. I at the end of the deck profile we did, I talked a lot about community and why we play this game. So huge shout out to the store owners for hosting, and I met a lot of really cool people, and that's what Yugioh is about. That's why we play these events. We want to hang out with cool people who enjoy the hobby that we also enjoy and play some cards. And the reason I play this game and play old formats is it's for the community of people, and that's where I also feel like online gets a little sharky.
Mm.
I don't like people who shark or try to shark for advantage. Like I get it, you're in high pressure situations, it's big tournament, whatever. There's a lot of prizing on the line. But like as an adult, well, how much does it really matter in your everyday life to win, I don't know, a couple $100? Like sure it's significant for it's significant, but it's not worth just being a rude person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I like. I feel like people can be more rude. I work online customer service, so I have a lot of experience where in person people are less rude to you because they don't have a online wall to hide behind.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I miss the community aspect of it when I play online versus in person.
No, yeah, that's definitely a big thing to take advantage of, especially when you're playing in person. Is community aspect. The game shop that hosts the GGP, shout out TGS, they've prided themselves on building community, and Konami recognized them because they're the biggest OTS store in Illinois, and because they've built the biggest community, and it's the one that keeps coming back. So that's really important to keep building, and that's why the success of retro formats relies on that community building. And then if we're talking about success of retro formats, and unfortunately isn't GOAT, it's Edison. I'd like to pivot a little bit toward Edison with the YCSs being all the UTW Ultimate Time Wizard events being Edison focused, because that's where the community is right now, and that's where Konami sees it. For Edison and like that style of gameplay, what has been your take on that versus Go format? What do you like better about Edison, or what do you like worse about Edison?
Edison for me, I like synchros. I like combos.
Synchro
And
combo.
synchro combo, yeah. So
Yeah.
I play a lot of Telebad. I picked it in List recently, which is just like big titanium,
Hmm.
negate target, attack for 28. But resource management's important in that deck too.
100%. 100%.
So
It's funny you mentioned, you have the Teledead deck in Edison, right? It's not a big three deck. And you said before you don't like playing the top meta, even in Go, it's even Edison. I've seen you play RGT. I've seen you play the Zoo Thunderclap Return. I've seen you play the Teledead deck. Do you always pick an off meta deck? Even back in the day when you were regional grinding, right? And you were, you went to Nats. Did you always pick off meta?
not always. Oh, man, back in the day though, we didn't have net decking as severe as we do now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think net decking is bad, but just like as a 12-year-old with limited access to the internet, like I can't just go look up what everybody's playing all the time. Like I didn't follow pro players. I didn't care. My brother and I would wake up on a Saturday morning, throw some jank deck together, and like duel each other. We kept our cards under my parents' bed, and we had our expensive cards in the binder. Well, a bunch of binders. We had a lot of cards. Um, and we would just go like island and build blast. So then I'm gonna go through all of our bulk cards and throw a deck together, and we would duel each other. So when you have that kind of experience, that was a lot of the fun for me. And so I remember a good example of this is there was a nationals. I don't remember the year, but it was when Cold Cat was good. Infirmity was still good, but it was neutered.
Mm.
And Frog FTK was around with Mass Driver.
So this has got to be Nats 2011,
Yeah, that sounds
2012,
right. Something
something like
around
that.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Grads was okay, but like not great. It was after Edison for sure.
Yeah.
And I brought a Light Stone deck that I had been testing for like a long time, and it was doing well at locals, and it had like Thunder Kings with Honest, Soul of Purity and Lights,
Mm-hmm.
and one Air Knight, obviously. Herald of Orange Lights. Um, Herald was good too in this format, Herald of Perfection.
Mm-hmm.
And so I played this like it had Cyber Dragons, just like aggro light stun. And I was 5-2 after 7 rounds. And
At
I went
Nats.
yes, and
Wow.
Nats with light stun, which was on no one's radar. Funny that my brother was playing Skill Drain Stardust Turbo. So it was so the goal was to summon Cyber Dragon, summon Psychic Commander, summon Stardust, flip Skill Drain, stay go. So,
That's
and
so
he
funny.
also was like I think he was 5-2 as well. Um, and I lost to Frog FTK, which was like the only deck I like could not beat.
Yeah, I mean
'Cause,
that was the better deck at the time. So.
yeah, my deck could stomp Herald because Thunder King just raises that deck. So
Mm-hmm.
does Herald of Orange Light. My deck could beat X-Sabers because it was a stun deck. If they didn't draw Cold Wave Cat, which one of my games I lost because my opponent drew Cold Wave Cat games 1 and 3. um, but yeah, so 2 of my losses, one was to Frog FTK and one was to just my opponent drawing Cold Cat. I don't remember my other loss, but I ended up 6-3, um, which for Nats is really good. That's the best I've done at Nats. We didn't go every year, so it was just kind of, I don't know. It's fun to play off meta. It's fun to create something and tweak it to your particular play style. Um, that's probably why I like Edison a lot. Is there's just a bit more. There's quite a bit more room to do
Mm-hmm.
well with a variety of decks. Whereas in Go, you can play some off meta, but if you're not playing Chaos Turbo and or Warriors, or I feel like Earth Aggro is really good. I don't know how
I
many
know
people
Earth Aggro I think is crazy, but it just doesn't
has
have the results.
consideration
Mm-hmm.
for the deck, but I don't know if anybody brought it to Worlds. Somebody had to.
Somebody had to have brought it because it was definitely up. It was definitely up there in Worlds last year. I remember watching Go Worlds and like
Yeah,
made it to day 2 at least. But
yeah.
I don't know. Didn't see the success this
It
year.
was the Chaos Monsters.
I'm
That's
saying.
why we got the Chaos Monsters.
I'm
But
saying
yeah,
that's why. But I mean, yeah, I agree with that to the extent that there's more creativity in Edison, right? There's a lot more creativity because there's a bigger card pool, but there's also a lot more room to be able to do well, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, if you load up ladder for Go format and you're not playing Chaos Turbo or Warrior, and you're like, I'm gonna play zombies on ladder, or I'm gonna play this off meta whatever it is, I'm gonna play Zoo Return on ladder, right? You're gonna get hosed, right?
Yeah.
You win a couple games, you're gonna get hosed, right? But then in Edison, you can kind of play almost what you want, and you'll see some success. Obviously, unless you're playing Black Wings or Hero Frogs or even
Yeah.
Value Turbo. But even within those three decks, there's a ton of variance within them, right? Value Turbo has so many variants that you can play with now. There's like Virus Value, Value Turbo Turbo, just regular Value Turbo. There's so many different variants, and it all fits different play styles, right? And so it's a lot more creativity in Edison, which is definitely to be appreciated a lot. Uh,
Yeah.
with Edison, where do you see yourself headed with that? Do you want to start going into the online space for Edison and try and qualify for whatever, or do you want to go to like their R bets or anything like that, or?
Yeah, for me, it's hard to justify traveling to Yu-Gi-Oh events.
Yeah.
I have a spouse, and I've got a dog and a job, so it's like, you know, I don't have the. I'm saving for a house, so I don't really have the expendable income to travel for retro Yu-Gi-Oh as much. So
Mm-hmm.
I would go to. I think E3 is talking about hosting an Arbet in Chicago, which would be really sick.
Mm-hmm.
Chicago is one of the strongest Edison player bases in the country,
Mm-hmm.
and so I would definitely come to a Rivet if it's in Chicago. Um, I don't enjoy playing online too much, so I really like coming down for the TGS monthlies that I
Mm-hmm.
can. Um, and then I've got two shops up in Milwaukee. Shout out to Evolution Gaming and Imperial Trading Cards. Those two shops run monthly Edison too, and a lot of the time the pricing is a pretty solid card you can win. So uh, definitely, I have a good amount of kind of more local tournaments. TGS is the biggest one I go to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's fun to just kind of have that like Chicago Milwaukee scene being pretty strong when the Chicago players come up to our tourneys and just get some good competition, and that's enough for me right now. um, for Goat, if we'll see what happens with Goat. I would definitely come to Goat events run at TGS for
Mm-hmm.
sure. I wouldn't travel too much farther than Chicago to play Goats personally. But yeah, if we'll see if I do some online to try to qualify for Worlds.
Yeah, gotta run it back.
Yeah,
Um,
try to run back,
the
yeah.
the biggest issue with R bets and GGPs for that matter, is that you know it's kind of hard to host those events now because those events have their own separate system that qualifies you for their own separate worlds. And what those events are not are Konami events, right? And so Konami wants to be able to take advantage of their card game. And so having the events at the YCSs, those Time Wizard events, are the big things for most of the Edison players. But they don't do that for Go format. And that's why Go format has its own Goat Worlds, UGPs, does all that stuff. But the issue then becomes Konami is, how do I put this? Konami is going to start penalizing stores for OTS stores specifically. Non OTS stores can do whatever they want, right? They're just a card shop. But OTS stores are limited to what they can do and what events they can host. If they're hosting a Konami event, they're unable to host an event that would qualify for an outside Worlds. And this is kind of interesting to note because with GGPs qualifying you for Go Format Worlds, that's not something OTS stores can host anymore. And so going with that, Go Format's going to have to deal with the stores that they've dealt with before no longer be able to run their events. And so it's kind of going to make it smaller and make it harder to get get players out there, get them excited to play. So I'm definitely curious to see next season of Go Format and where it's going to head that way. But I think the way that it's going, Edison's just keep trending upward, and Go Format's gonna fall off because there won't be enough events to run because there won't be enough stores who are willing to. If their own OTS store, they're not gonna be willing to jeopardize their status, and the ones who aren't OTS stores are not going to be as big because they won't have the big enough reach because they don't have the OTS status backing them.
Right. That is really interesting. I do think Goat's headed more online, generally.
Mm-hmm.
I think with it really comes down to what does what does GOAT Format YouTube channel want to do? What does GoatFormat.com want to do?
Mm-hmm.
How long is JDZ going to be running that? You know, and there's a lot of he's very beloved, and there are a lot of challenges too, and he's talked about them in multiple streams.
Yeah.
So, you know, whatever happens with that is JDZ is such a big pillar for the community right now. It's just usually you need more than one pillar of the community to keep it going for a long term.
Yeah.
And yeah, Worlds is the premier event, and you know, AGT said after he's taking a break to focus on Edison. Alvarado doesn't have much left to accomplish in GOAT, so we'll see what he does next season. And hat format's also picking up, which means I think Konami would be much quicker to run hat events than GOAT events.
I could definitely see the same. They announced Team YCS, the 3v3 in Vegas for 2025 again, because they did one this year, and they're going to do one again in February. And, you know, they didn't announce what kind of 3v3 it was for the Ultimate Timers. Or we don't know if it's going to be another, because last year they did GOAT, Edison, Tengu. And if they're going to keep that same theme, I think they're more likely to do GOAT, Edison, Hat. But we're also thinking in the same vein, because of the popularity of Edison and the lack of popularity of GOAT, and the nuance and it's just a newer on the scene with hat format, that it might just be a 3v3 all Edison. And so there's different kind of speculations to what the event might be. So I'm curious to see how it's going to shake out, especially to see how hat's going to develop, right?
That's interesting, for sure. I don't have a hat deck yet, but Evolution Gaming started. They're doing a hat monthly now.
Hat month? Okay.
Yeah, every second weekend of the month. So if any hat players out there that live near the Milwaukee area or want to travel up for a hat event, Evo's running them now. They will be starting in January. So, and I know a lot of TGS players have been playing hat between rounds at the Edison tournaments.
Yeah.
So my buddy tells me, because the last one I went to was the Kai's tourney. So I just think the community, that's another format that the community really wants right now, and Tengu feels like it's in a similar boat of GOAT, where it's not. The difference with Tengu is I don't think it ever really picked up, and
it was always on the fringe. It was never like a popular. Yeah. Yeah,
and I have Color Korean Tengu, so that's one of my favorite decks of all time. I debuted to YCS Indianapolis in 2014 with Yugioh Karakuri.
Nice. Yeah. So yeah, that's if it's like a format and like means something to you, then I guess it was fun to have it built. But like the popularity depends on the community. But at what point is it not retro? Because like hat is 2014. Like, is that still a retro format? Like, I get it's 10 years old now, but at that point you have like developed archetypes. You have specific you have like searchable counter traps, and you have hand traps, and it's like, at what point do we cut off retro Yu-Gi-Oh?
Yeah, I agree. That's a good example of why Heavy Storm should not have been banned. I think nobody should be able to comfortably set 4 or 5 without a Solemn or a Starlight Red. So, I don't necessarily like that. It's hard to combo through 5 back row.
That goes in anywhere. It's hard to do anything through 5 back row.
I don't like that style of play personally, but I would build Yugioh Karakuri and hat if I were to build anything.
Yeah. In that same vein with retro formats, and I have a 2-part question with this. The first part is, when did you stop playing advanced constructed format, or like when did you stop going to like regionals and YCSs and all that? And then with that, what format then would you like to see that's maybe not popular, that's a retro format you would like to see become popular?
Yeah, that's a good question. Start there. Lastly, regionals I went to, I was playing Cosmo Demise. And I went 6-2 and got my invite, which I did not practice. I don't even remember. I think that was Pendulum Magician was really good.
So that was like 2017, 2016, around that?
Yeah, so that's when I stopped. I played a little bit of Metal Foes locally, like after, but my brother and I both said we're kind of done with this. Pendulums. Uh, we played a little with pendulums, but wasn't really
Yeah.
just our thing. And then we didn't touch links at all when links came out. So quit 2016, 2017. I was in college too, so like less time to play. It started to take a lot of time to especially learn new mechanics, and I wasn't a fan of links at all. So and that was in the master rule where you had to like summon a link to the extra zone. You could only have one extra zone monster, and you just summon a link to it to point to summon more. And I was just like, this is stupid, so I can't.
Yeah,
just
that master rule update turned off a lot of players because it made it because pendulum players, because they got really popular after, because pendulum was a big mechanic before links, and so pendulum players were turned off because they couldn't pendulum summon from the extra deck, just they couldn't dump their extra deck anymore. And then it was just like they ended up fixing it in the next master rule, but even then that was just it was a weird period, because that's when I started playing competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, was that era. And so like I'm used to that, and so but it was just like I remember it being a weird period of Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yeah, and for a format that I think has a good shot at getting popularity at some point, modern Yu-Gi-Oh's on the downtrend. That's been very clear from a lot of pro players, and so there's going to be eventually like a group of players that played a lot of modern that have a inkling to play something more similar to what modern was. And people's favorite modern, as far as from what I know, Toss is the format that people love the most out of that era of Yu-Gi-Oh. You know, Thunder Dragon, Orcus, Salamangreat, and Sky
Strikers. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think all of those decks are pretty fun to play. I followed the game, so I saw like gameplay from all of those decks. So I could see Toss format becoming a thing eventually. But I don't think that we talk about. I think the reason Tango never really took off is it's too similar to Edison. It's a slower gameplay too, which honestly is actually worse. People don't like that as much. And like Hat is the better, slower gameplay format. To a lot of people. I don't know if I personally agree with that, but Tango's too close to Edison.
Yeah.
Edison is I mean, my opinion, a better format, and I think the data would show that people prefer it anyway. And GOAT is so different from any of them. So GOAT has its own thing where it's the early gameplay, like the peak Yu-Gi-Oh of early Yu-Gi-Oh. Edison is the peak Yu-Gi-Oh of
the Synchro era. Yeah.
The Synchro era, right.
And then people are saying Hat's like the peak of XZs, but I think that's debatable.
That's debatable to me too.
But it follows. I view it as a 5-year rule, right? You have 2005 is GOAT, 2010 is Edison, and 2014, 2015 is Hat, right? You're just right before that. And so if there would be a next retro format later, Toss is 2019. So that is the next 5 years. So I think it's those 5 years are a good enough gap for people to accept that a new format's come in, a new style of gameplay. So it's definitely interesting to see how it would pan out like that. But is there like an old format that you played maybe like when you were doing your regional grinding that you're like, man, I don't care if people would like it. I want people to play this format with me.
Well, I found I like the really old school DDT. Full power DDT.
2006, 2007, yeah.
Yeah. I like Teledad at full power. 2-0 format, for sure. And Saki, but I won Yugioh with Teledad, so that's always going to be like one of my favorite decks to pilot. And I still play it in Edison, so I love Destiny Draw at 3. It's just fun.
Yeah.
Fun.
Well, you have Destiny Draw and Disc Commander at 3, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah. PCM was a fun deck to pilot too, so like they're broken decks, but they're also really fun to play. So I don't know, I would play those decks. I've played kind of like Gauntlet stuff with my brother before too, where we go back to old formats and we'll play decks. Um, there was a regionals when Glads was at full power that my brother and I put Crush Card with Sangan and two DD Crows in the main deck. Um, because DD Crow hosed the mirror match.
Yeah.
Um, and we were both 6-1 going into the last round, and we played each other, and my brother let me win because he had his invite and I didn't.
Mm.
So, but he ended up top 8ing anyway. So we both top 8'd with the exact same deck list, except I had 3 Hero Cleanos and he had 2, because we didn't have.
You just didn't have 6 of them. That's so funny.
Of them. So, yeah, it's fun to revisit the decks that you piloted when you were playing well, when you had a good time. I also really enjoy Yugioh Karakuri, not the hat version though, like the format where people are experimenting with Dark Worlds. So it was right before hat.
So like 2012, 2013 era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was 2013 YCS Indianapolis that I made day 2. And I was like, Windup was neutered, but still good.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So I went 7-2 with Yugioh Karakuri day 1. And I was destroying locals for like 2 months straight with that deck. So I just love, that's my favorite combo deck I've ever played. Hands down, it's a good time. You got Laredo, which is basically Halka Fibrex before Halka Fibrex was a card.
Yeah. Oh man, don't get me started on Needle Fiber. Oh my god, that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, if you're trying to build 2013, no one will play it. So no one will play if you build 2013. So start building those decks. But speaking of like revisiting old decks and building something fun, in a Konami blog article in 2010 at Nationals, you were asked a question about Hidden Arsenal 2, and that was coming out, and you had said Naturia Beast is crazy for negations for spell cards, and it's just a really good card. This was a young Nolan Benson. So has Naturia ever been a deck that you thought about considering building in any format? Or
my brother and I tried it for sure. Yeah, we love Naturia, and when you learn Cliff misses timing, and you're like, dang, this deck sucks. That's horrible. Cliff be so good if it didn't miss timing. Like Synchro with Cliff, you just get Reborn Tango in Naturias, but they did not have to make that card miss timing.
I don't think Konami knew what they were doing with writing those effects with missing timing and everything.
No, I don't think so either, because there was no way Cliff should have missed timing. But like Bamboo Shoot was crazy if you get it off, and they just didn't have enough cards to be good.
Naturia is one of those archetypes that has everything. It has everything. But it's not good.
Who interviewed me for that? I don't even remember that.
I just looked up articles, and this was a Nats article from 2010, and they were just asking players about Hidden Arsenal 2, and the overwhelming answer is everyone was ready for Nat Beast, but
Nat Beast is a crazy card, regardless of. Yeah, but Naturia isn't the deck that makes it a good card. Like Barkion Land Voice is really good in Tengu. I found that out because in the Karakuri deck, your end board can often be like 2 Karakuri Synchros plus Land Voice in your full combo. And then if you have enough spell negates, they just like can't do anything. It's really funny.
Yeah.
So,
that's it's so funny. Naturia is always all the extra cards are crazy. If you can shove them anything that can play Earths, then why not?
Samurai's on Barkion.
Yeah.
Because they could make it.
That's I don't know. I thought that was just really funny. Just that article, and then just Naturias in general. And then
it's still a good card, but Naturias no. As a kid, you see a cool archetype, you want it to be good so bad. My brother and I would play it to the ground, and to that example, my brother is a big worm player. He played worms he played worms at Nationals one, and he was like 5-1, and then he got 1-for-1 Tengu 3 games straight, and he won one of the games.
That's wild.
So that was his like loss after that, and then he ended up like X3. But man,
taking worms to Nats is just a bold enough strategy on its own. That's just wild.
Yugioh remains one of the most broken trap cards that was ever printed in its era. It's just the worm cards aren't good enough to make it good.
I remember reading them all because they did all the 26 of them, and it's like none of these synergize with each
Yeah.
other.
X is it. You just get Worms X into Yagen, and that's the best that Worms can do. And then you have Kataros to search Zex.
Mm-hmm. And that's
That's,
it.
that's it. You got 12 decent Worm cards, but Kataros is not even that good because it's a flip.
You gotta do what you gotta do sometimes, honestly.
Yeah.
But that's part of it, the creativity and the deck building, having fun with it, and taking something that you like. So, we're getting close to our end of our hour here. I did want to end on totally out of the blue question. What can you tell all our listeners about the weekend commute?
Oh, funny question. Good research, Pete. Yeah, the Wing Commute was my first band in college. So I played with my buddy, and I was a singer, and that's really the band that taught me how to songwrite a little bit. Like we were not good, but um, you gotta start somewhere with music, and um, it led to me learning how to book gigs, how to perform live, uh, you know, and now I'm really comfortable with stage presence, public speaking, interviews like this. Like I don't really get nervous. I've done it a lot, talking to crowds and whatnot. So yeah, music has been a part of my life since I was a kid. I grew up Suzuki trained violinist and started teaching myself guitar when I was 18. And the Weekend Commute was like when I was 19 to maybe 21, 2 years or so. And yeah, if anybody wants to check out music that I've released more recently, 2019 I was in a project called Tomatillo, and we recorded a 3-track EP that's on Spotify and YouTube, and it's on all the platforms. And I am the singer in that project, as well as somebody who helped write the instrumental parts. So that was the more serious projects I got into, and then I moved out to Portland, and like obviously the band breaks up because I moved, but it was a good time. So
What have you done with music since then? Have you still songwriting at least? Are you still playing something? Are you doing like solo gigs now?
I'm songwriting. I studied jazz guitar. I've been studying jazz guitar for a while now, for like a couple of years, and music's become something for me. And I moved back about a year ago, so as somebody who's no longer like young 20s, it's hard to coordinate time with people when they get to their later 20s or early 30s, which is where my friend group is right now. And so people are already in projects and don't have time, or they just have other life things going on. So I'll play when I can. But when some of my friends hit me up, ask me to fill in somewhere, I'll go play guitar or whatever I need to do. But yeah, I'll be getting into some new songwriting in the near future. So I'll keep you posted, and you can keep your viewers posted.
Awesome, awesome. And then my last question for you, I just want to end on this. What's one lesson each from Yu-Gi-Oh and from music that you've learned that's been the most important that's helped you, you've instilled into your daily life?
Yeah, I think it's an important reflection to do with any hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Yugioh for me, since I played at such a young age and I was playing against adults, you learn how to advocate for yourself. You learn how to be around adults. They were young adults for the most part when I started. Yu-Gi-Oh was mostly like late teenagers, early 20s. But you learn how to be confident.
Mm.
I learned how to be confident. I learned that I also learned I could get better at something, right? I learned that I wasn't very good when I first showed up to my local shop as like a 8-year-old with like 65 cards in my deck, and only 10 of them were good. So I had a mentor who helped me out, and then by the time I was like 11 or 12, I was getting pretty good at the game, and then I got my top. So it taught me hard work and time can really make you better at something, and it gave me a community as a kid that was outside of school, which was really nice. Um, for music, music has always been an outlet for processing emotions for me. I think music has taught me a lot about how to express myself in a way that is a bit more nuanced. I don't have to be direct about it, and it helps me get my emotions out. Uh, and it gives me something fun to do. You know, I like to play. It's I like to listen to music. I like to play music. Um, yeah, both of them have definitely taught me confidence. But if I'm going to differentiate music from Yu-Gi-Oh, it's definitely that expression piece, learning how to self-express.
Yeah, no, that's really important. Definitely awesome to lead off on, and good lessons to kind of live through in your daily life. So again, Nolan, I want to thank you so much for taking your time to be here today. We really appreciate it. If you guys like this podcast, please go ahead and drop a like, comment your favorite part on it. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will link, of course, all of Nolan's music down in the description below. So you go ahead and check him out as well. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Peace.